Hey there, fellow wanderers. Tonight, you find yourself drifting through a time where the moon hangs low over thick forests, and the scent of damp earth mingles with the faint aroma of burning wood. Picture yourself in a medieval settlement, where shadows linger behind crooked beams and chilling winds slip through every cracked shutter. The silence is uneasy, broken only by distant howls and the rustling of leaves, as stars above form a pattern only archers and omen readers might decipher. This is not a tale of heroic ballads or chivalrous tournaments. No, this is the raw life of a medieval archer where every arrow is a prayer, and every pull of the string could be your last calloused hands. Hollow stomachs, constant training. You probably won't survive this, but your story? It's one worth aiming for. So, before we dive deeper, I ask only this. If this kind of raw, unvarnished truth speaks to you, click like, hit subscribe, and leave a trace of yourself in the comments. Tell me your city, your time, your state of mind. Now, dim the lights. Let the hum of your fan blend with the wind of centuries past. Let's begin, and remember, in medieval times, even survival was a luxury. As you gather your cloak tightly around you, navigating narrow cobblestone streets lit only by flickering torches, you imagine yourself gripping the sturdy wood of a longbow, your steadfast companion. But let's rewind a bit and consider how you would come upon such a weapon during these tumultuous times. Forget any notions of walking into a quaint store and purchasing a ready-made bow, adorning your choice of decorative carvings. In reality, you strapped yourself in for a journey, not through lush meadows, but through demanding trials and punishing routines that forged the mettle of a dedicated archer. Your introduction to the world of archery likely began in childhood, among families who understood the army's demand for skilled marksmen. An archery school wasn't your local rec center. It was often a part of local militia training, with many starting as early as age 7. You'd learn the archer's creed, the rigorous discipline needed to string a bow properly, and the repeated, exhausting drills to improve your draw strength and aim accuracy. Imagine each morning no Instagram stories or sleepy-eyed coffee rituals hear you rise with the dawn, ears greeted by the clarion call of roosters. Stiff from the night chill, stretching cramped muscles, and finding balance after sleeping on straw mats, you come to recognize that every muscle in your body, arms, chest, shoulders, and back would be worked until fatigue no longer registered. Training bows were more than just instruments. They were your teachers. Weapons prized, yes, but rivals in your bid to conquer them. One might picture the drills akin to today's boot camp's endless repetition, under the critical gaze of a master who knew the difference 5 degrees of deviation could make between life and death. And no relaxation from the physical strain. When not shooting, polishing arrows was an ever-present chore. The monotonous scratching sound as you whittled shafts and feathered nocks was almost meditative, reminding you that consistency was king in both assembly and aim. The specifics of these exercises often require a delicate dance between muscle memory and mindfulness. You'd engage in activities that encouraged agility and unity, with the bow obstacle courses that tested footwork, all while repeating mantras urging focus. Modern historians might agree on the effectiveness of these drills, but they still argue whether the precision needed was closer to science or a dark art. In this gritty backdrop, archers didn't breathe clean air filtered through Xbox cartridges. No, you inhaled nature's aromatic storia, heady mix of adventure, fear, and the pervasive tang of sweat. On certain days, when sunlight flirted mercilessly, considering the shimmer of heat waves ominously dancing across fields, maintaining concentration was an uphill battle. The relentless pressure of performance, aiming cohesively with unruly gusts, wasn't ideal in less than favorable conditions. Thankfully, the navigation of these challenges gifted you just enough foresight to second-guess unpredictable breezes. Spoiler alert, you'd often get it wrong, and arrows would lamentably miss their mark. Now, you might reach the cozy setup of a camp, where elder archers, those weaned on a lifetime of campaigns, gather by the fire to recount tales of valor and jest alike. Their humora survival mechanism perhaps painted their battles in vivid, if not slightly exaggerated color. One couldn't prevent a chuckle escaping at their tales of arm-lock joists and surprise victories against mathematical probabilities and brazen winds. Laughter ever so sardoniquas, after all, welcomed in camps hungry for morale. This was your life as a medieval archer, anything but ordinary. As the embers of those fires dim, and the first touches of twilight cool upon your face, you begin to appreciate the finely woven tapestry of camaraderie, discipline, and humor, embracing your fate and the instrumental role you're etched to play a story of bold endurance amid nature's multifaceted cruelty. Can you already feel your eyelids drooping, lulled by the silent allure of this historic epoch? Imagine, if you will, a medieval training ground, dusty, raw, filled with the grunts and groans of determined young souls destined for the life of an archer. As you trudge along paths beaten by the footsteps of those before you, the earth beneath feels unyieldingly familiar. You are not thrust into this world with a bow in hand, rather. Your journey commenced with humble beginnings and rigid discipline. In medieval times, archery was more than just a day job. It was a craft honed through rigorous routine. You'd begin as an eager child, no older than 7, clutching a rudimentary training bow, determined to make it your ally. These early days were a trial, often filled with more misses than hits. But such failings served only to stoke the fire in your belly, a fire that would eventually guide your arrows true. Mornings were no haven for lingering dreams. You awoke with the early light, your breath visible in the chilly air, and prepared yourself for the day ahead. Feet coated in the dampness of morning dew, trod toward fields where your teachers awaited. These masters of the bow, veterans of countless campaigns, bore scars both physical and mental there, stern expressions hinting at stories they rarely shared. Your attendance was not just mandatory, but a cherished duty. The training was exhausting, yes, but you embraced it with the single-minded determination of youth. Your very first lessons involved stance and strength, a balancing act on uneven ground, while learning to string and draw a bow. These tasks, though seemingly straightforward, demanded immense physical exertion. It was said that to draw the iconic longbow required a strength that could rival Hercules himself, with draw weights sometimes exceeding 150 pounds. So, you worked tirelessly, strengthening your arms, shoulders, and back, until the bow felt not like a stranger in your hand, but an extension of your will. But it wasn't all toil and no play. There were touches of levity and strange quirks among the routine. Legends told of archers shooting apples off heads as a test of accuracy, though whether these tales were fact or fiction remains a topic of lively debate among historians. Perhaps these fables were cooked up to amuse and test the mettle of fresh recruits. After all, a well-placed punchline could make even the harshest training session a tad more bearable. As the sun arced across the sky, you wouldn't be granted the luxury of resting in cool shade. Instead, you practiced under the glaring, sooner practical necessity, for it mimicked the unrelenting conditions of actual combat. With each loosed arrow, you learned to adapt to the elements, ignoring the stings of sweat in your eyes. Your aim had to remain true, even when weathered skies conspired against you. There was also the communal aspect of archery training. Amidst the individual focus floated a camaraderie in shared struggling notion that, yes, your fellow trainees were also friends. You and your comrades developed a bond formed in the crucible of joint effort, where friendly competitions sprouted to see who could hit the bulls. I mossed a diversion that made the burden lighter and the day shorter. Still, beneath these lighter moments, you understood that the skills you honed here were not for mere sport or vanity. Every arrow loosed, every breath counted, was practice in preserving life and maintaining peace both for yourself and those you swore to protect. Such responsibility weighed heavily on young shoulders, but with maturity came acceptance. It wasn't solely the upper classes who wielded these weapons. In fact, archers formed the backbone of many armies. Historical records reveal their crucial roles in battles where ordinary foot soldiers transformed the tide with volleys of arrows, sometimes in terrifying unison. Your teachers might remind you of Crécy and Agincourt, battles where archer ranks were the decisive factor. And though historians still argue whether the tales of these battles were embellished in the retellings, the underlying heroics have never been disputed. These were the legends you aspired toward, the echoes in each twang of a bowstring. By the time the evening bloomed, shadowing the training field in cooler hues, you would head homeward, physically spent. Yet, As you lay upon your straw-stuffed mattress, mind buzzing with the day's lessons, a kernel of satisfaction took root. Each aching muscle was a badge of progress, inching you closer to the mastery only dreamed about by those who ventured this path. The life of a medieval archer was not paved with gold, but with perseverance. You, dear traveller, became more than a messenger of metal and wood. You strung together a life tapestry rich with gritty realism, raw determination, and, if you were fortunate, the whispered promise of service enshrined in glory. Each day woven into the next, becoming part of the intricate pattern of a life steeped in the sagas of dire realism over polished myth. And as you lay to dream, the rhythmic echo of your heartbeat mingles with the strategic hum of battle hymns past, reminding you that every small victory in training reflects larger triumphs to come. If you could peer into the quaint, yet deceptively complex world of crafting arrows, you might find yourself wistfully wishing for today's one-click online shopping. With each arrow more than just a utilitarian projectile, it was akin to a bespoke piece of equipment, customized and fine-tuned in ways that modern factory precision would struggle to replicate. You, an eager yet justifiably frustrated archer in training, learned early on that arrows were like Pioplino too were the same. Each had its quirks, demanding respect and attention in its unique crafting journey. Traditionally, the life of an arrow began as an unassuming piece of wood. You had your pick from a variety of timbers, each with their own reputation and personality: ash, oak, yew, and sometimes even an exotic wood you couldn't quite pronounce. The shaft had to be straightened meticulously, often using heat and careful bending, until it resembled an idealized line more than a recalcitrant branch. You might spend hours perfecting this process, coaxing it into shape like a wayward child. Here's the kicker. If the shaft had even a slight kink, it would most likely become a renegade in flight, with unpredictable consequences. Once suitably straightened, your attention shifted to the fletching. Imagine standing over a workbench with feathers before you, typically goose but duck and swan feathers. Found their fan clubs among archers too. The smell of singed feathers might linger as you trimmed them to match, a smelly endeavor reminiscent of cheap incense wafting over earthy floors. Properly applied fletching was critical. It provided aerodynamic stability, not unlike an early form of vehicular spoilers, but without any horsepower to boast about. An interesting nugget. While historians still argue whether their origins were purely practical or held mystical significance, feathers often bore protective markings or prayer symbols, offering a charm of good fortune for both the archer and the arrower, so you hoped. And then there were the arrowheads. Crafting and fastening these was no act for the weary-eyed, with each being its own microcosm of complexity. You could have a simple bodkin point for piercing, or a broadhead if you fancied efficiency against armoran. Artful answer to the quizzes of warfare circumstances met along ancient campaigns. In the dim light of your workplace, often the same abode as your sleep, you sharpened these tips, till they gleamed with a sharpened ire, poised against foes. But the life of an archer extended beyond tender loving care in craft. You also had to contend with nature's whims. Launching these marvels of medieval engineering required a dance with the elements. Oftentimes, when you stood upon the field, you realized that every breeze carried the promise of wayward shots. Many an archer played humble meteorologist, trying, usually with resigned humorto, chart the fickle forecast in hopes of eclipsing the wind's chaos with your own precision. There's a story archers told. Nature's way of testing humility was through an unexpected gust, to remind even the loftiest marksman that pride precedes pivoting prods of grass. Between the crafting and the countless practice hours, you learned to keep a stoic patience—a minor miracle, considering the drip-drip of prolonged frustration. For each arrow that returned unharmed, there were those swallowed by the terrain, buried in fields, or lodged beyond recovery in the depths of forested canopy. Imagine finding your spent arrows like hunters, tracking the evidence left behind. It was like playing hide-and-seek with little wooden fugitives, a test in resourcefulness and, indeed, a pain for the knees. Occasionally, you had to watch out for the borrower's fellow archers who misplaced their shafts suspiciously close to your shooting zone, leading to a ragtag Frankenstein collection compiled from the shared troves between brothers in arms. Yet, Even amidst the dire persistence of missing arrows, a hearty belly laugh often tempered frustrations, a tale worth recounting by the evening fire, its glow assembling faces in warmer relief against a world of heartier charcoal. Despite these endless trials, each completed arrow bore a promise of potential, holding them as extensions of yourself. A mix of anticipation and pride buoyed your spirit. You were not merely memorizing directions for assembly, you were entering a dynamic relationship where your intentions, capability, and the chance for a clear aim were all bound intertwined. This was your craft, everyday labor giving flight to ancient dreams. So, as the moon overhead glows an ethereal light across landscapes you tread, you embrace fully this endlessly meticulous journey, an odyssey into archery that reframes once day-long drudgery within an elegant weave of history, crafted entirely with your own hands. Can you hear the arrows whistle past your ears, marking the air with intentions unseen but felt in your core? Here lies the quiet beauty in every shaft left to the elements, an expression of ambition unspoken. Imagine today how you might feel taking a prized possession, perhaps your beloved smartphone, and exposing it to the harshness of medieval life. No protective case, no shelter from the elements. That's quite akin to the relationship you had with your bow in those times. More than just a tool, it was an extension of your very being, demanding constant care and vigilance to maintain its unyielding elasticity and precise craftsmanship. In the ever-rotating cycle of an archer's duties, bow maintenance was a ritual unto itself, a need as daily as bread and water. As the day's trials drew to a close and the embers dimmed, you could often be found tending to your bow. The wood, usually yew, was a thing of beauty, the perfect marriage of heartwood and sapwood, chosen for its balance of strength and pliability. The care you offered it wasn't mere nostalgia, it was a necessary devotion, prolonging its life and its reliability on the battlefield or the hunt. As light softened into evening hues, you'd sit with your instrument, fingers methodically running over the bow's polished curves. Even when physical fatigue whispered for rest, dedication pushed you onwards. With beeswax and oils mingling into a balm against your hands, you smoothed over its surface an aromatic ceremony that tethered your craft to nature. The oak or yew of your bow was a living partner to be nurtured, conditioned against the ravages of temperature changes and battling moisture-induced warping. Stringing the bow was itself no small feat, often made of sinew or, for the wealthier among you, silk threads twisted into a coherent whole. The bowstring was both a marvel of engineering and an Achilles heel. You'd stow it carefully, avoiding undue tension when not in use, lest it stretch into ruin. Any archer worth their salt would have replacement strings close at hand, for snapping one amid battle spelled doom for all but the divinely fortunate. Adjusting the tension was another aspect of delicate operation. You'd adjust and readjust until the bowstring allowed for the maximum draw without compromising flexibility. The sound it emitted as you tested its strength, a quietly satisfying thwang, became a sweet reminder of preparedness. Trust in knowing that with this simple but critical gesture, you could propel force into purpose. Quivers full of wood oil often sat nearby, their distinctive smells perfuming through the open air alongside the cooling aroma of earth. For when creaks suggested some sinister invasion of wear, the oil was a first defense, massaged into the bow to banish weaknesses and preserve continuity of action. Historians still debate whether there were secret recipes passed among archers for the best mixtures, guarded like medieval trade secrets. Most frustratingly, the cracking threat from an uncooperative bow would test your patience, both as artisan and user. Monkeys at the anvil felt it far easier than you, who needed to mend these stressed fibers without losing a precious tool. Humidity was especially traitorous moisture, from rains clinging on weary fingers or fog misting up the fields, both eager to peel away layers of what you had so carefully built. Relief came whispered in the rhythms of routine, the varied practice of conscious confidence in your craft. You participated not only because every bow was important, but through repairs and care, you conveyed deep respect for what it allowed you to achieve and protect. No simple instrument. The bow was an heirloom of trust, through which you clocked archers with tales of mechanical failures, too numerous to recount over flames and gentle laughter. Remember that accidental misfire we discussed last time? A laugh it may provide in hindsight, but at its core lay a somber reminder of tragedies entwined in medieval stories. The cost of neglect was high and unforgiving, with enfeebled boughs set to writhe at the worst of times. When you finally laid your bow aside, muscles relinquishing their grip, knowing the symbiotic blend of effort and care had been successfully exchanged, only then would you find peace in the gathering stars. Fellow greyhound dreamers of yore shared these burdens, crafting legacy between peace and combat. Now, as you slip into slumber, the echoes of bowstrings resonate beneath calming winds, whispering that slivers of history are tied with smooth arcs of promise, balanced between heart and hand with every meticulous care ritual. You stand there, peering into the vast expanse of medieval fields, a sea of possibilities and adversities alike. It's a life marked by the unpredictability of Skiesa world, where an archer's fate dances upon the whims of the weather. Each morning as the fog lifts, you prepare not just for practice or battlefield glory, but for the elements themselves, which were as much a part of your life as the arrows nocked to your bow. Turn your gaze skyward, and you'll quickly realize that weather wasn't just an idle topic for conversation over a late, was a critical factor that could compromise or fortify your every action. You learn to read clouds the way others might read fortunes, your livelihood tied to these atmospheric cues. Gossamer clouds might whisper of calm days, perfect for refining one's shooting precision, while brooding, darkened canopies warned of grave challenges ahead. Rain was no gentle poetic musette, was a perpetual thorn in the side of every self-respecting archer. Imagine standing ready to loose your arrows, the draw of the string, a testament to your hard-earned skill, only for a torrential downpour to drench everything in sight. Your bow, if not properly cared for, would swell with moisture, offsetting its tension and throwing shot after shot embarrassingly off target. Worse yet were tournaments under such conditions, where misfires became the subject of a rival's amusement, and you found the distinction between comedic farce and legendary deed glaringly thin. And do not discount the wind, that whimsical trickster capable of turning victory into vexation with a single sweep. You might spend hours meticulously crafting each arrow, paying homage to its aerodynamics, only for the wind to intervene with contrary designs, no mercy granted for inexpertly judged gusts. When you felt it, tingling on your skin, you knew every loosed arrow was a calculated risk, bearing witness to the ever-present fellowship between nature's caprices and your own steadfast focus. Snow, too, carried its burden. Sure, the image of pure white cloaking trees captivates a modern longing for winter landscapes, but to you, an archer, it made for difficult footing. The cold penetrated layers of cloth intended for protection, and frozen fingers struggled to maintain the delicate balance needed for precision. To train or fight in winter's grip was to court trial in every sense. Of course, there were those among you who perhaps took issue with the sentimentality imparted into meteorological calamity. Bah, wet weather, they'd scoff, articulating that a real archer could strike true come rain, snow, or hail. Yet you knew that every missed or weak shot was its own small tragedy. So ultimately, grand tales of weather-resilient heroics were common counterpoints to ensconce idly by crackling firesides, evoking laughter and camaraderie among fellow archers. The auditory landscape of each day offered its own insights. The wind wove songs into the woodlands, its rustling among the leaves serving as a conductor for nature's vast symphony. Though tempting to dismiss as mere ambience, these whispers tutored you, granting hints about the speed and direction of air currents knowledge you tucked away for later use, a secret pact between you and the forces of nature. Historians debate whether weather played a decisive role in singular, renowned battles, suggesting the fickleness of climate chose sides when human met human in ancient fields. Such assertions fuel epic sagas, perpetuating the idea that nature herself bore great interest in the exploits of mortal men and women. Whether fact or myth, the convincing ambience these stories create maintains an air of awe around the weather's unpredictable sway. When you retired each night, the day's trials etched into your bones, you lay with gratitude, not for the absence of inclement weather, but for the gift of tradition between you and the sky, above a harmonious interaction, even when at odds. Predictable though they never were, the elements taught patience and insight, revealing that nature, like your bow, could be tamed but never truly controlled. As sleep tiptoes in, imagine the soft pat of raindrops on leafy canopies or gusts rustling with haunting tranquility. The earth remains a storyteller crafting worlds from drifts of clouds and breaths of wind. You're intertwined with its narrative, a saga where each day is an exercise in resilience and adaptation far beyond the grasp of fables or jest. The gentle rhythm of an archer's heart beats alongside the weather, a lullaby steeped in the perpetual back-and-forth dance between man and motley skies. In our modern era, sustenance comes so easily with supermarkets and delivery apps at our fingertips. But back in your medieval archer days, not only did you conjure with bow and skill against wind and rain, but you also contended with a constant nemesis much closer to your stomach, hunger. Picture trudging through your day, equipped head to toe, not only with weaponry, but also the bare essentials to keep body and mind from faltering. The archer's diet was a far cry from today's balanced ferrite, was sparse, rugged, and dictated by the whims of availability. The daily bread, quite literally, was bread staple and sustenance, hearty and simple. A loaf, baked in rustic ovens inside communal kitchens or at home, served as both ordinary fare and somber reminder of life's simplicity. The rich, nutty aroma of the baking bread might entice, but its texture was often as unforgiving as the life it sustained, frequently complemented with what meats could be harvested or preserved. Salted pork, perhaps, or smoked fish, occasionally enlivened the dieta special treat to break the monotony of a routine menu, not by choice, but by necessity. And, oh, the ale. Your liquid companion, it doubled as refreshment and meal fortified by grains. The warmth of barely fermented drink eased the day's aches and afforded a welcome balm against grueling exertion. Yet, ale was not simply for merrymaking. It was a standard hydration choice, safer than often dubious water supplies. Fruits and vegetables, those gifts of nature accessible through trade or careful cultivation, were less plentiful than you'd wish. They found their way into your diet, chiefly near harvest season, when foraging and local markets opened their doors wide. Apples and berries painted in vibrant hues adorned your meals, their brief seasonality both a celebration and a reminder of nature's clock. Grains were the backbone of your existence, transforming into porridges and thickened soups that warmed limbs and filled empty bellies. Nothing was wasted. Each bit held its own in the grand symphony of necessity. Innovations in cooking were born out of scarcity little tricks shared among archers to enhance bland meals with wild herbs, foraged from fields, not yet trampled by endless campaigns. In fact, a quirky side of this frontier cuisine was the medicinal properties believed to be imbued in meals. This belief stemmed partially from survival necessity and partially dipped into superstition, infusing meals with marshmallow root for respiratory relief, or stave off common ailments with pungent garlic. This was no random speck of indulgence, but an early marriage between food and well-being. Feasts were few, famine was familiar. Long battles and extended campaigns meant reliance on rations designed for longevity, not taste. The hardest times ruptured supply lines, leading to desperate searches for anything to nourish empty stomachs. You'd find camaraderie among fellow archers who shared precious morsels, smiling through the irony of lack jokes about rations thicker than shields broke the mental tedium, if not the hunger. The days of scarcity honed your resourcefulness, shaping both body and spirit. Your diet was neither luxe nor lacquered with choice, but in every nutty loaf or hearty stew, you tasted survival, a palate strengthened against life's trials in a way no culinary college could ever tutor. Historians debate the specifics of these medieval diets, whether they affected the cognitive abilities or stamina of soldiers in specific ways. But what remains is the understanding that every archer, hardened yet hopeful, tasted nature's offerings and learned restraint in ways perhaps envied by modern standards of abundance. Ultimately, when your head met a makeshift pillow at the day's end, the satisfaction arose not from culinary brilliance, but from surviving another day, nourished against adversity. The stories of food unknown to you then drifted into dreamsaland where feasts bestowed luxury in myriad forms. And in those peaceful respites between slumber and wake, you shared a legacy of resilience, a table set not for kings, but for warriors both near and far. Your place in that eternal dining hall guaranteed by fortitude, crafted daily, a meal at a time. As you rise from the straw-stuffed mattress, your thoughts drift toward the day's labors ahead, but not before confronting the familiar discomfort cloaked across your skin. The attire that layers like an onion, designed not with comfort in mind, but with survival at its core. Medieval fashion was more necessity than flair, often an unyielding reminder that anything that aids your endurance is burdened with inconvenience. Begin your day by shuffling into undergarments of linen. They act as the buffer between your tender skin and the harsher layers that follow. Linen, though breathable, has a texture that can irritate if not soften to age, but it's your saving grace against the chafing combination of sweat and woven wool. Over this, you'd wrap a tunic plain for the most part, its color dictated by what dyes were available and affordable. Wool was the fabric of choice, chosen for its durability and warmth, but its relationship with your skin was one of mutual disdain. In winter's claw, however, you blessed every itchy knit for the slight solace it offered against the bite of frost. As an archer, mobility was as crucial as protection. Imagine layering on armor, resembling panels of crusty bread around a sandwich, where every strip you fasten transforms the sensation into one of inescapable rigidity. The jerkin, of hardened leather sewn to shield your torso, grants some flexibility without entirely robbing you of agility, attempting to strike a balance between awkwardness and assurance. Footwear bore its own saga of simplicity and struggle. The medieval shoe, typically made of leather and fitting like a second skin, albeit imperfectly so, offered scant support against rough grounds and terrain, its sole softer than modern sensibilities might afford. Picture the gentle thud of each step, where bracing little shocks transmute upwards through soles that could barely cushion what lay beneath. Weather dictated additions or subtractions to this ensemble. On rain-soaked marches, a cloak of oiled wool drapes over your shoulders like a giant bat, offering protection from moisture but at the expense of breathability, turning into a walking sauna all too quickly. If fortune smiled upon you, a belt or sash cinched at your waist added practicality, a place for small tools or pouches, carrying necessities that couldn't be trusted to pockets. For pockets were a luxury yet to be common. Your hands were left uncovered gloves too bulky for dexterous manipulation with a bow, for you couldn't afford to waste precious time fumbling with a shot due to an unwieldy grip. Embark upon the day's journeys with this knowledge. No matter where you stood on the social ladder, clothing was an expression of humble resourcefulness. Each piece drew from materials locally harvested, shaped by techniques less sophisticated by modern standards, but steeped in tradition and practicality. Niceties like comfort were often reserved for the rich, those whose garments spoke to position and privilege, their rich brocades and silks whispering of worlds untouched by peasantry's labor. Yet you, dear archer, wore the garb of pragmatismanist and unassuming in attire that reflected your life's path of duty over distinction. Clothing carried meaning not solely in function but also in identity. When you stood as a member of a unit, clad in uniform tones and textures bearing the sigils of king or noble, you were more than an individual, a part of something larger than yourself, enmeshed within the sinews of loyalty and collective identity. Historians still ponder whether the way soldiers dressed affected their battlefield efficacy. Did the weight of armor hinder, or did it bolster resolve? There's no definitive conclusion, yet the question lingers like a phantom half-truth, half-legend, evocative of those who once embodied such tales. As daylight stretches into twilight, peeling away these layers rewards you with equal measures of relief and rejuvenation. With each piece discarded, the freedom to breathe, to move unburdened by fabric and leather, comes a renewed appreciation for the simplest pleasuresser, cool breeze upon bare arms, the luxury of softer skin exposed to the night's musings. Consider this. Your attire may have served smoothly in the crucible of history, but through nights of distant stars and wisps of dreams, you embraced simpler truths. Naked beneath whatever adornments fate fastened upon you, a shared humanity breathes in quiet understanding. You retire not as a figure clad in medieval guise, but as a soul stripped of time's garb, suspended between the realities of past and present, where the heart beats more freely in its simplest adornment. The world around you darkens with each step into the evening hours, signaling the time to embrace the relentless rhythm of duty and endurance. Night watches and marches were as much a part of an archer's life as the bow itself, a necessity dictated by the endless demands of medieval warfare and vigilance. You march on, the weight of the day's labor settling into aching muscles as you prepare for the long haul through dusk's disquieting embrace. Standing guard beneath a canopy of stars, you sense the pressures of responsibility resting upon your shoulders like the shadowed embrace of mountainous terrain. As an archer, your senses are your first allies in the quiet of the night, ears attentive to the hiss of a distant breeze, eyes peering for faint silhouettes moving across moonlit expanses. The touch of cold air brushes against your skin, enlivening your instincts as the night's anticipation curls around you. Like all warriors, you exist on the cusp between rest and readiness, always attuned to the complex dance of shadowed landscapes and whispered omens borne by the nocturnal winds. These watches require more than physical presence. They demand mindfulness as exquisite as the tension in your bowstring. For here, each breath is measured against the urgent pulse of possibility, where shadows twist into forms both imaginary and true. The irony of such vigilance is a double-edged reality. These quiet hours are as much to live by moments of introspection as charged readiness. Thoughts wander past memories of sunlit archery drills, through bantering camaraderie exchanged over midday meals, settling into deeper contemplations about life's transient spectrums, shadowed by history's ongoing saga. You pull your cloak tighter, cocooning yourself against the night's giveaways of chill. Marches, too, are a test of endurancean, uninterrupted procession of step after deliberate step, where trundling along well-trodden paths carries you to fields as yet untouched by conflict. The sound of hundreds of booted feet moving as one becomes a rhythm, a song without melody echoing through the silence of sleeping landscapes. Exhaustion threatens like a relentless prankster at your shoulder, but your limbs, ingrained with instinct, carry on in supplication to duty. Smoky tendrils from distant fires linger on the edge of perception, a scent that drags memory out of the shadows, where grizzled veterans speak of battles won and those less fortunate lost. The scent reminds you that while the night shrouds the familiar, it remains no protector from the echoes of war that call through pine branches and across starlit fields. Humor, a lifeline unyielding in its paramount function, carries you on these marches, this cadence of camaraderie, an armor against fatigue. You share whispered jests, poking fun at the irony of guardians lost among their own fashions toward folly or dramatized deceit. It is in these moments that the bonds between peers emerge most clearly, woven in nights far from the cheer and intimacy of hearths. Historians debate just how much these nocturnal endeavors affected the outcomes on battlefields dating back, yet the pertinent truths seem nestled in the understanding that an alert archer during a night's watch became the tip of defense, a human pillar against anarchy's insidious designs. As twilight deepens toward the horizon's embrace with dawn, your mindset transitions toward resto, sleep between watches, or until conflict interrupts vigil. You let go of weariness with each fiber of clothing removed, seeking warmth against the cooling earth beneath. Your limbs, unaided by science's whispers of rest, find solace in half-breaths tinged with exhaustion, yet here, in the temporary embrace of slumber, you exist within a pure moment, untroubled by history's pressing weight. Night stretches like a languid beast, spanning the chasm of restless hours and quiet dreams. One day's march concludes as another soon begins, and with it, the endless cycle of march and watch continues. It is a life entwined with echoes of shared stories and reverberations of triumphs past, lost among threads of night's ageless weft across a world's eternal loom. Rest, dear dreamer, in the patience born of twilight's resolve, for at dawn the task anew unfolds, resolute in its perpetual motion. The break of dawn heralds not only a new day, but also the burdensome mantle of purpose thrust upon your shoulders. Each call to arms makes clear that the grand tales of heroic adventure mask a more somber, less gratifying reality. Welcome to the murky realm of medieval politics, alliances, and often fruitless battles that a dutiful archer must navigate with diligence rather than dreams of glory. As you join your fellow archers, the landscape before you is shaped by long-held grievances, disputes over land and titles, or the vainglorious ambitions of rulers whose commands dictate your path. You move as part of an army, each step forward pushing the boundaries between strategic endeavor and vagaries of a chaotic world, where few of the embroiled understand the true reasons they fight. You might wonder, as you lace your boots with deliberate care, whether this conflict is righteous or merely a play in the drawn-out theater of power shifts amongst nobility. Historians often argue whether soldiers of your time fought for loyalty, fear, or other inscrutable motives, embroiled in causes as ambiguous as the morning mist. Marching into battle is an act less propelled by gallantry than grim determination. One riveting scene after another, right out of an overblown painting of chaos, but read between the brushstrokes, and you'll decode a tableau of wearied acceptance. On the battlefield, nothing is certain except that life hangs in precarious balance, swaying to the rhythms of clashing steel and whistling arrows. It is a tapestry of calculated chaos, tapestry where surviving another day doesn't depend solely on skill, but also on luck or favor, such as offered by a timely shield raised. You are surrounded by the cacophony of orders shouted, weaponry clattering, and the perpetual roar of massed humanity, a veritable storm's eye dwelling on the precipice of survival. Each arrow you release is an act of resolve against innumerable foes, a gilded messenger, navigating gauntlets predetermined by chaos theory, not ballads. But blink back these primal engagements, and you find the political machinations running deep beneath the surface, like a predatory leviathan lurking amidst the battlefield humdrum. Often, you woefully acknowledge that success depends not solely on valor, but on twisting paths of dynastic ambition and treaty. In a twist of Hamletian magnitude, you might hear whispers of alliances forged and forgotten with nary a soul, suspecting the gears thus turned. Loyalty is a treasured prize, but painfully transient in this world of shifting sands. Trust within your ranks is paramount, yet, by somber noon, it could be subverted by an envoy's silvered tongue offering greater rewards. What sits behind a nominal cause lacks grand banners and proclamations, instead cocooned in political shadows, traded over sealed parchment long before today's skirmish danced beneath the sunlit sky. As an archer, every decision you make is rendered complex by endless variables. You strike where instructed, yet questions gnaw at you. What gain lies within these lands? Whose legacy shall today's endeavor venerate or villainize? The jest lies in these points oft left unexplored, until much later analyzed by chroniclers, weaving grandiose versus grand battles, leaving truth somewhere untrodden between pages. Now, notwithstanding personal idealism, you accept that your participation is part of a timeline greater than your day-to-day existence. The high politics might inextricably make puppets of men holding strings of fate yet today. You perform roles that blur hero and herald into one tableau, vivant of history's unfolding drama. Nightfall draws close again, and as truths blurred across dusky horizons beg the acceptance of unknown outcomes, the camp ambiance becomes a tapestry of determined respite. You gather alongside comrades at the fireside, relieved of armor's duty, sharing what could be your collective valediction, jesting playfully at the irony of fate's design. The flames dance meditative waltzes, and the conspiracy of cracks and whispers fashions mysterious music to lull even wary soldiers into receptive tranquility. Yet as the embers dim to starlit twinkling, you manage for woe or wonder the embrace of liminality wherein self and shadows commingle. Here, beneath star-flung stories, you adjust your night's repose against Earth's knowing cradle, where dawn echoes with the promise of continuing tales. You become one of an endless stream of figures existing in perpetual balance, forever poised at the shaky interstice between focused aim and the swirling maze of grand designs writing chapters, unfolded and forgotten, bound forever to history's dusty shelves. As dawn breaks again on the horizon, the camp stirs, a hive of anticipation and orderly chaos as you prepare for another day in the woven tapestry of medieval warfare. The duties ahead are intertwined with tales of valor and betrayal, truth and deception, universe, where trust is as rare as unicorn sightings and often as fragile as the thinnest spider's web. As an archer, your expertise doesn't grant you immunity from the scheming minds and shifts of loyalty that flourish amidst these armed bands. The forces you serve are a curious mixture of nobility, commoners, turned soldiers, and mercenary wanderers, each carrying stories like scars, some perhaps more treacherous than others. The woven title, Tricks of the Traitorous Trade, unveils a world of subterfuge, carefully layered beneath flashes of steel and banners unfurled in the wind. You see, medieval military campaigns weren't just testaments to martial prowess, but platforms brimming with political intrigue and espionage. Spies and secret informants moved amongst armies, slipping between friend and foe. They whispered promises of riches to those like yourself, archers, caught in the relentless grip of duty. And sometimes, these promises may cause even the staunchest heart to waver. Picture this: a cloak and dagger meeting amidst trees where one's accentuated nod might render daunting the subsequent ripple of schemes. It isn't uncommon for envoys of opposing factions to weave narratives of temptation conundrums, to seduce soldiers with tales of a land without strife, where wealth flows as freely as spring rains. The charm lies not only in the promise of coin, but softer chains, influence, power, or reprieve from bloodied memories. Historians still argue about the impact of such subversive practices on key battles across medieval Europe. To what extent did covert manipulations turn the tide? Inspired confessions and documented incidents hint at major outcomes subtly revised by secretive hands, playing a dangerous double game. Whispers snake through the rank tales of fellow archers accepting clandestine incentives, clandestine signals from amidst trees passed by moonlit shadows across silent marshes. The risk inherent in these dealings is ever present, for betrayal discovered meant an ignominious end, often serving as a stark, epic embodiment of misdirected adherence. And yet, in this volatile mixture of allegiance and ambition, even acts of supposed treachery carried nuances of desperate survival. Perhaps those misguided souls, caught in webs of deception, sought escape or imagined greater noble causes. The line between conscience and compunction was fluid, much like the shifting loyalties an archer witnessed during their tenure. Engaging with this strata of covert affairs, one learns to deflect temptation with skepticism and grounded camaraderie, evoking lessons hard-earned from both alliance and alienation. Trust is not so loosely worn on the sleeve, but fastened tight beneath layers of discernment, forged through shared victories and skirmishes bravely tested. Amidst the spectres of deceit, humor served as a beacon of judgment tribbing. The mysterious figure hastily cloaked at dusk, winks exchanged over jugs of ale mocking the antics of supposed traitors. Laughter often disarmed mistrust, forging bonds anew from steel of shared transparency, as robust, if not more so, than finely knit chainmail. As peace tempers another night, gazing into flickering embers glow, perhaps you'll ponder if challenges in loyalty transcend all warfare realms, seeking out universals untouched by age. The whispers of deceit are but a small element of larger sagas told by nightfall's embrace, yet one cannot shy from acknowledging their presence shaped the world in which you inhabited and where history etched footprints. With each passing day, you remain mindful of honesty and your own choices, as narratives throughout time hint at treachery's repercussions looping through folds of history. In accepting this dance, rooted in trust and vigilance, the life of an archer grows more complicated and connected, tangled with stories spun from tales hinted upon by the very air surrounding. Night wraps its gentle arms around, and as whispers slink into shadows, a calm descends. You succumb to dreams reflecting echoes of today's truths, tangled in quiet paradox, dancing in interwoven hues of light and dark, where histories fuse to forge tomorrow's sunrise. Accidents and misfires, an unpleasant but inescapable couplet in the life of an archer. Imagine a place where human error meets the capricious theatre of war, and you'll uncover the myriad ways even the best-laid plans can unravel. Welcome to the harsh and often unforgiving world, where life balances precariously, and mishaps carry the weight of the unforeseen. From the very first moments you picked up a bow, you were acutely aware that accidents lurk in every archine of your reality. During training, misfires were an accepted part of learning, the unexpected arrow slipping from your fingers, or the occasional awkward release, leaving your shoulder with a bruised reminder of lessons still being learned. Your masters, fellow archers seasoned by similar errors, would tell stories of their own youthful mishaps. Humor was a salve, helping to patch embarrassments with tales tinged with irony. On the battlefield, however, the stakes were exponentially higher. An errant arrow here was not merely an oversight to be laughed off, but rather a potential game-changer, a decisive factor that could tip the scales into chaos. Picture a landscape as vivid with pigments as any chivalric tapestry, where the finest detail could mean triumph or ruin a drop of ink on a critical design. From time to time, misfiring resulted from equipment failure, bowstring snapping mid-draw due to poor maintenance, or an arrow shaft splitting from an unseen fracture. It was a stark reminder that warfare was an equal partnership between human and weapon, where harmony was fragile at best. Zodiac patterns of allies were prone to frantic shifts when reality subsumed strategic structure, and one defective arrow could become worth 1,000 whispered prayers. Yet, expertise in archery sought not only skill with the weapon, but mastery over emotions as well. The impulse to yield to panic or the cold clutch of fear was constant on the battlefield, where each heartbeat drummed the narrative of moments suspended between fate and decision. You learned to breathe through tension, steadying the bow even when incoherence raged around you. Holding firm under duress was paramount, for a single misplaced arrow could fracture the thin veneer of order among ranks. Quick responses were cultivated to rectify such errors, a precise scan to assess trajectory, recalculations whispered like mantras, and, when possible, immediate adjustments. Here, focus became your steadfast ally, and mental clarity was honed with the same stringency as any sharpened blade. Historians still discuss whether the psychological endurance of archers surpassed that of their fellow soldiers, navigating stresses with a remarkable stoicism underlined by tales of countless misfires through wars. Not all accidental outcomes ended poorly. Some became legends of the artfully absurd. Imagine the tales of arrows, splitting opponents' arrows mid-flight, or guards momentarily confounded when arrows mysteriously ended lodged in places no one expected. Such chance occurrences were wellspring sources for post-battle marvels by campfire coteries. In some stories, they implied divine intervention, having a bit of cheeky fun at the mortal's expense. Yet, amid the, not so few, unlikely amalgamations of humor, the seriousness of focus couldn't be overstated. An understanding manifested, sometimes accidents weren't isolated, but signified deeper lessons. Whether by emphasizing how every small action bore rippling consequences, impacting even destinies, such awareness heightened your deliberate practice. You understood that, even in unintended mistakes' clutches, every act bore consequence and, ultimately, decisions colored the thread of narration. That was your life-an unending yet eloquent repetition, etched into the very earth. At day's end, you retire, the sun tucking itself beyond the horizon. Home becomes anywhere a cloud can rest lightly upon your brow, relieving burdens momentarily set down beside you. Just beyond visions blurred, the comfort blankets of twilight promise balance against day's myriad echoes where mishaps wove their stories. The balance between failure and fortune belonged in stories far yet to unfold through wandering dreams, steering hearts close. Rest, dear dreamer, assured in waking hours' wisdom, mirror worlds woven hues, where reflections conjure tomorrow's whispered potential by paths known and unknown. Your sleep cradled in gentlest protection, knowing clouds of your paint tapestries more vibrant by trials, already glimpsed and mysteries yet drawn. As you tread through yet another day, the intricate lattice of medieval society becomes ever more apparent, a world defined by hierarchies and power dynamics, as complex as the patterns on a lord's tapestry. For an archer, maneuvering through these layers required equal parts, dexterity with a bow and an unerring understanding of social choreography. In the grand scheme of medieval life, the archer, despite their importance on the battlefield, often occupied a modest position within the societal hierarchy, not noble enough to attend the finest banquets, yet esteemed enough to be acknowledged by those of higher social standing. It's a peculiar liminality, a balancing act that required not just skill but a savvy understanding of one's place and how to navigate the treacherous waters of class and expectation. Every day, relationships with peers, vassals, and the ruling class were key to your survival. Amongst your fellow archers, camaraderie forged in the crucible of shared trials and triumphs. Together, you towered above the mundane, becoming part of a brotherhood that transcended the individuated struggle for recognition. In groups, the spirit among you was buoyant with brotherly jest and storytelling, cemented by the arching volleys impeccably timed and released. Yet, this camaraderie was juxtaposed by the formidable maze of fealty, where one's allegiance to a lord or liege promised not just protection, but complex layers of obligation. Knowing when to bow and when to bend light-hearted jests into momentary reprieves made the difference in being valued or overlooked. It's an unspoken dialect, silently complicit day to day, understood by those who stood watchful like yourself. At times, internal hierarchies emerged even within archery ranks, often influenced by merit and favoritism measured through ability and demonstrated loyalty. An unearthed understanding lingered among you, that advancement wasn't solely waged through excellence alone, but rather intertwined with being part of a larger narrative, a collective fate, bound by both intrinsic virtues and external machinations. Power fundamentally colored how alliances formed and dissolved. Just as arrowheads were forged for distinct purposes, so too were allegiances tailored in a world forever in fluxor realm, where the pulse of political flattery quickened into tactical partnerships, or alliances frayed upon missteps exposed through warriors' folly. The king's court, while rarely within an archer's daily orbit, exerted influences nonetheless immediate. Beneath the grandeur of processions and edicts, political intrigues brewed outcomes tested by your peers, translating into orders and deployments mirrored by the cadence of your part. After all, your efforts lent literal and symbolic weight within these designs, subtly playing parts in the jigsaw patterns shifting beyond visible courts. In contrast, serfs and townsfolk, bound to soil's heavy touch, offered perspectives oft ignored, arguably minor ripples within the fabric, yet impactful upon the whole. Here, you sometimes paused to gauge whether nobility's grasping hand reached all or scarcely extended, but still, it was omnipresent. This invisible chain underpinned your reality, a complex juxtaposition, connecting peers, rulers, and all burdened by the ceaseless passage of time. Historians ponder whether these power dynamics within the military mirrored larger societal frameworks, allowing dynamic confluences of influence to navigate the ebb and flow of medieval narratives. Discussions challenge us to consider the myriad ways power concentrated, dispersed, convening often unpredictable currents through decisions made quietly, temporally, constricted by urgency and ambition alike. In quiet moments by the banks of introspection, where stillness caressed the soul after battle's tumult, you reflected upon the expanse, encompassing, you wondering where threads of your brochure crossed, and travelled distances invisible to waking dreams. Here, touched by twilight's mantle, you teased the tempest fleetingly held at bay, imagining anew the possibilities crinkling future paths wound inevitable and circuitous. With each evening comes the gentle resolution to contradictions, lived by those subjugated amidst medieval order and chaos. In slumber's soft embrace, historical hierarchies yield to shadow dances played out along crests of ancient dreams, where echoes of parchment-printed decisions fold corners unto ripples, suspending still longing for their next signature edgars and endowments. Relinquish weary thoughts to comforts of night, free within tranquillity's temporal embrace, knowing threads artfully woven anew beneath each dawn's gentle touch, inviting visions beyond gathered embers' whispered warmth. Such felicity's guide, shading dreams in alabaster echoes, and the wonderment of timeless glories artfully seen between dreams. Another day dawns, and with it comes the grim necessity to face not just the challenges of combat, but also the more personal battles of health and hygiene. Imagine standing on the cusp of the medieval world, where innovations in cleanliness are as yet unborn, and the spectre of disease lurks behind every embrace of camaraderie and shared space. Ah, the joys of medieval hygiene, paradoxical reality, where despite the rugged beauty of the natural world surrounding you, the daily rituals of cleanliness left much to be desired. For an archer, whose life was intimately connected to the body's demands and the sharp precision of focused senses, neglecting personal hygiene wasn't simply unpleasant, it could be a vector toward debilitating illness. Your attire, layered by necessity, often became a trap for dirt and grime. Changing or washing clothing was less frequent than your modern imagination might hope. Water wasn't always readily available, nor was it considered with the same sanctity that a clean garment signifies today. And as for bathing, well, that was more luxury than routine, often transactional at best when streams aligned conveniently along the campaign trail. The importance of hygiene wasn't entirely lost on you, however. Communal baths existed in towns, and for those lucky enough to access them, they were both a social hub and a place of temporary relief. Picture yourself submerged in warm waters amidst wafting mists, yet mindful that soaking too long might relinquish more grime back into a soup of communal history. In lieu of frequent baths, hand-washing, though basic, was a small salvation. By simply rinsing with water, often cold and chilling to the touch, you at least gestured toward cleanliness. As night rolled gently into each day, you learned to embrace herbal remedies and simple concoctions, drawing warmth from dried lavender and mint suspended near your bedding, in a soft attempt at mitigating the constraints of medieval living conditions. These small tokens served doubly as rudimentary air fresheners, and, perhaps more whimsically, as comfort within the treacherous bounds of erratic hygiene standards. Despite such efforts, illness was an omnipresent spectre, and you weren't immune to the cycles of disease that could decimate armies as thoroughly as any adversarial force. Dysentery, typhus, and other ailments took ready advantage of the close-quartered living conditions that defined archers' encampments. The sight and smell of sickness permeated the fabric of daily life, reinforcing the reality that health was as fleeting and capricious as fortunean enduring trial, whose presence underscored the delicacy of existence amid medieval war. Moreover, the pervasive discomfort of lice, fleas, and other such unwelcome camp visitors contributed their own brand of itchy discontent, which no potion or potion could immediately alleviate. Even horses indispensable to rapid movement and cavalry became hosts to ailments that could, and often did, influence the outcomes of campaigns. Historians ponder the extent to which sanitation or its lack affected military outcomes, a fascinating reflection on human history, exploring diseases acting as much a part of the fabric of warfare as strategies and alliances. The unholy trinity of crowding, malnutrition, and poor hygiene wrought havoc across encampments, leaving cautionary tales illuminated only by hindsight. As you retire at day's end, breath clouding the cool night air, allow the worries of dirt and decay to slip from consciousness for a while. The wonders of medieval constellations, as they frame the sky with dots of twinkling hope, promise respite. Your bedding is clean enough by the standards of the time, offering some relief from relentless irritation. Let the moonlight bathe you in dreams where you wander lush meadows and resplendent, unhindered rivers, endlessly abiding by realms free from the grime of daily consequence or grim routine. The past calls, bidding you rest, where timelessness herself cradles warriors in essence distilled health, transfigured in the dreamscape, uninhibited by the corporeal nudges of worry. And so, breathe deeply, knowing that each night brings new potential, filling dreams with lessons learned and cleansing images, easing the burdens of medieval hygiene that weigh upon hammocks hung between waking life and repose, knowing every dawn renews life's challenges anew. As the first threads of dawn weave light into the sky, signaling the start of another day, your thoughts drift towards moments of inner reflection. It's an opportunity to confront the mental toll exacted by a life of constant readiness and the weighty burden of warfare. In each breath you take, there lies a tapestry of memories both vivid and haunting, a reminder that more than physical endurance is needed to survive the life of an archer. In the medieval world, soldiers were not afforded the luxury of modern psychological understanding or therapy. Instead, strength was measured in grit and perseverance against the invisible wounds imprinted on body and mind. The endless cycle of battle, camaraderie, and loss wove itself into your very being, presenting inner struggles that required as much focus as any external threat. Each engagement on the battlefield was more than a test of skill. It was a journey into the harrowing reality of conflict, each arrow loosed, perhaps leaving echoes in the psyche long after its flight ceased. Amidst the chaos, the faces of allies and foes alike blurrily etched into memory, creating the stuff of both heroics and nightmares when night embraced the weary. Understandably, The mental toll made itself apparent in different guises, from the dulled senses born of fatigue to the nights spent wrestling with sleep, pursued by vivid dreams of battles past. These scenarios translate into interruptions of re-steech, tossed and turned fatigue-laden minute, spent like a currency, with no hope of exchange. One listens, attuned to echoes, as stories subtly whispered reveal the burden of being more than just a bowman, exploring the realm of consequences, continuously borne aloft by memory's fragile chords. Humor-sharp, sardonic, and sometimes haunting became a tool not just for surviving physical hardships, but emotional ones as well. Jests woven from the day-to-day preserved a sense of camaraderie, a brotherhood bound together by more than martial skills. Within these exchanges lies the comfort of solidarity and unspoken acknowledgement of shared burden and quiet strength. There were stories told half-truths tethered to legends of the knight's resolve, facing insurmountable odds with mirth and might. These tales served not just as entertainment by the flickering firelight, but as testaments to resilience. The ability to laugh in the face of inevitable tragedy was in itself a survival skill, bolstering spirits against despair. One cannot forget the solace found in the rituals of faith. Despite the absence of clear psychological aid, religious observance offered some respite. Devotions to saints, psalms recited in whispers, and prayers for protection invoked a sense of higher purpose. They served as a balm for weary minds, a testament to beliefs underpinned by both tradition and the hope that something greater than oneself provided a guiding hand. Historians still explore whether these emotional burdens affected battle outcomes, hypothesizing that morally a reflection of collective mental resilience could alter the course of history as decisively as any army's physical might. They reflect upon sieges where men, surrounded by the twin specters of scarcity and uncertainty, attributed failed defenses to psychological unraveling rather than tactical missteps. For you, dear archer, the challenge wasn't just to remain poised under the weight of this complex reality, but to acknowledge its presence and still find a way to thrive. Strength of character became an equally crucial companion to the literal armor you wore, fortifying a frail human heart, both fierce and fragile. As you nestled into your nightly haven, cradled by the earth's firm embrace, allow these contemplations to drift into the realm of distant dreams. While night cloaked the open air in shadow, the mind wandered through landscapes of serenity, away from archways wrought by worry and back towards sanctuary fashioned by the legacy of hope and resilience. Release all lingering dissonance to the warm embrace of a universe unwavering in its promise of eventual peace. In that void between wakefulness and grazing repose, intertwine with patience, crafting a smoother passage for thoughts unwoven to repair themselves upon the forgiving loom of time. Beneath the stars, the journey to inner peace begins anew, each phase sustaining wisely beyond fleeting uncertainty, certain as morning light among outlined trees. With the sky painted in delicate hues of dawn, you awaken not only to the promise of a new day, but also to the perennial complexities of morality and ethical dilemmas that shadow your every step. As an archer, you are inextricably linked to the decisions made on the battlefield, where every action echoes with moral weight, prompting deep introspection about duty, choice, and consequence. In the medieval world, ethical quandaries were not abstract musings to be pondered in solitude. They were woven tightly into the fabric of everyday life. You grasp your bow with confidence, yet each fitted arrow carries more than a martial edge. It embodies the broader questions of right and wrong, of justice versus obedience, that ripple across the fields of battle and into your conscience. Much like the fletching on an arrow, decisions and their consequences are interwoven, pointing toward a distant target you can see but not always clearly define. Duty to your lord and allegiance to your fellow archers can sometimes seem at odds. There are moments when you must decide whether to follow orders resolutely or assess their righteousness under your own compass, a dialectic dance that could, upon missteps, render you a savior or pariah in mundane gestures writ large. Conversations around campfires sometimes tread cautiously into these territories, where seasoned warriors' figures, etched with experience like ancient tree trunks offer, stories of old battles with moral conundrums played out in the shadows of combat. They recount times when choosing the path less trodden by majority could lead to questioned loyalties, yet rewarded resolve, blessed by convictions firmly held. These aren't merely idle tales spun for amusement, but living narratives reverberating with unresolved debates from the past, often told with the charming wit that buffers colder reflections. The anecdotes form a narrative core within each participant, an anthology of personal mythologies intertwined with collective consciousness, left to unfold by firelight's dance. Imagine standing at the crossroads literally and figuratively, where one must choose between altruism and survival. Each battle presents its own secular testaments, petitioning you to navigate instinct against inner edict, sometimes standing as an arbiter over life and death. Multifaceted dilemmas, encountered in skirmishes or heroic escapades, reveal layers of motives beneath tactical urgencies, illuminating how sacrifices given were not merely corporeal, but moral and emotion-fraught as well. The Church offered guidance, promising solace or an absolution of spirit upon fate's undeniable tumble over time's precipice, ingratiating those with purged consciences in ethical euphemisms coded on pages both fervent and cryptic. However, that solace wasn't omnipotent, neither beyond exigent critique nor devoid of dogma's influence, urging loyalty with a caveat, while leaving moral complexities yours to ponder, dissect, debate, and decide beyond parchment's confines. Historians examine with intrigue how concepts of morality shaped the tides of war and peace, whether actions on battlefields influenced the broader moral shifts within kingdoms and nations, their lands inscribed as much by ethics toppled uncertain as by boundaries drawn anew. Ruminations hover, ephemeral as shadows of clouds on the pulsating landscape, across the corridors of leagues shared in near-perpetual marches. As your day draws toward night's embrace, you reflect upon the choices that marked its hours, weaving threads on a loom rich with the colors of moral pondering. The moon becomes your silent confidant, gazing down softly as you ask yourself whether, after all, the price paid in ethical coin amounted to more than a simple weighted balance of choices. Retreat into slumber brings a surcease of decision-making's demands, where dreams conjure elusive resolutions and absolutions, alighting on landscapes where peace and torment coexist, transiently with tender certitude. Here, amid the ruins of decisions past and future, emerges a promise that each new dawn might find you better prepared for approaching Quandaries, at least more forgiving of them. Thus, wrapped in night's tender cocoon, release into the exquisite boundlessness of dreams spaced, separated from daytime's heady challenges and buffered by rest's gentle caress. Suspend judgment within the cradle of your heart, open unto solace which life's tapestry unravels, while whispering truths obscured yet certain, where clarity mingles seamlessly with the dawn. With each passing sunrise, a new dawn unfolds, ushering in the familiar rhythms of medieval life for an archer whose career path, while initially promising a steady trajectory, often revealed itself to be fraught with uncertainty and limitations. Life as a soldier, particularly an archer, was inherently a chapter marked by both ephemeral glory and the sobering awareness that its arc was finite. The medieval world held little semblance to the modern conception of career progression. Your skills with a bow set you apart, yes, and afforded you a respected place on the battlefield. Yet beneath that veneer lay the stark reality that this life was not one easily sustained into the twilight years. The very nature of warfare demanding physical acumen and endurance beyond the bounds of aging, muscles meant that the cyclical pressures of action would eventually take their toll. Typically, as a young archer, your journey began with promise, hands steady on a bow, hope tethered to youthful zeal and dreams of heroic exploits, or, at least, the security of stable employment within lordships. There was, initially, the allure of upward mobility. Rising through the ranks was possible, though not guaranteed promotion often depended on merit, valor, and yes, at times, the tides of favor and fortune spun by hands of courtly influence. However, as the years passed, even the most gifted archers found themselves grappling with the inevitabilities of time. The relentless rhythm of battle, compounded with injuries that could turn from minor to career-ending in the blink of an eye, presented the spectre of an exit from active service far sooner than one might wish. Survival hung in a careful balance where sustaining an occupation at the end of a bowstring hinted at precarious futures as much as victories gained. For those arching luminaries who achieved distinction, roles might evolve, ushering them into positions as trainers or advisors, where decades of acquired knowledge could be imparted to the next generation from the relative safety of a training ground rather than on the battlefield. Here, a sort of renewal transpired, where continuity and purpose were forged anew, this time through the shaping of young minds eager to emigrate personal legacies into epochs yet revealed. As the transition from active archery to alternative roles loomed, many found solace and utility in the humble vocations awaiting outside the sphere of militarized demands. Skills honed over year-keen eyes, a steady hand, tactical intellect could find purposes in trades or communities employing hunters, gatherers, or scouts. These vocations nourished collected skills while providing sustenance through shared community enterprise. For some, their fervor aligned with crafting the fabrication of bows and arrows themselves, providing lucrative paths for ex-military personnel to invest years' worth of hands-on expertise and nuanced perception into the intricacies of arching design. Others, entwined within peers' supportive camaraderies, prospered in mercenary bands driven by mutual necessity and deep-seated loyalty that surpassed the prince's edicts or king's cord. Historians are continually intrigued by this cycle, probing how career arcs in medieval times affected broader social structures and individual decisions within them. Recognizing that economic uncertainty, coupled with longevity's capricious reach, prompted substantive transition from battlefield rigors into society's complexity. Then, of course, there were those whose trajectories took paths less aligned with martial roots-embracing religious furloughs or pilgrimages that branched away into spiritual or peaceful societal service. These choices, woven amidst newer dreams, found accord through redemption, resting anew in movement from defense to devotion. As you lay beneath starlit skies, perhaps contemplating your eventual transition away from the immediacies of combat duty, reflect on how each experience gathered and tested along the journey might serve a broader purpose. Each swing of a sword or loosing of an arrow enfolded subtle learning hidden beneath an immediate action, inviting nuanced interpretations and fulfillment beyond war's exigencies. In dreams, futures await with paths painted unrestrained by doubt, freed from linear expectations defined by time's passing edge. Here, dear archer, let potential unfold beyond measures seen during waking vigil, invoking the linchpins of hope and open possibilities across tomorrow's emergence within both gentle fidelity and unwavering trust upon dawning sunlit hues. As the horizon stretches into daylight, revealing fresh challenges ahead, you find yourself reflecting not just on battles fought in distant lands, but also on the more insidious battles fought within the confines of the law and order of medieval society. The legal system and entity, as complex and varied as the lands it governed, posed a formidable test for any archer daring enough to navigate its tangled pathways. In a society bound by feudal ties and the whims of noble decree, the law was not the objective and impartial entity we strive for today. Instead, it ebbed and flowed, molded by the oscillating power dynamics and subjective interpretations of those wielding authority. Imagine being caught in a web where justice often seemed as elusive as peace itself, where allegiance to the wrong leader or a disengaged remark at the wrong moment could spell your undoing. For an archer, repair and protection lay partly within your own skill and service on the battlefield. Yet the rest, protecting one's rights, land, and reputation, often depended on navigating the unpredictable tides of medieval jurisprudence. Acceptance within the chain of command came with certain protections, but life on the fringes, between campaigns, was rife with peril. Feudal disputes, minor transgressions, or accusations of betrayal presented potential pitfalls. Picture yourself accused of poaching or straying over invisible borders into another lord's domain. Whether guilt or innocent folly, the consequences were dauntingly severe. Without the established procedures of legal representation, defending yourself often meant relying on reputation, personal relationships, or favor gained through your archery service or past battlefield camaraderie. The justice meted out could be as varied as the jurisdictions that imposed it, ranging from the whim of a lord to the ecclesiastical courts, where moral transgressions trailed with perhaps heavier consequence than civil offences. For the archer, aiming to navigate these convolutions required stealth, wit, and sometimes well-crafted petitions that sought redress or pardon, flourishing beneath the stamp of loyalty, assured to figureheads in power. Embodying persuasive gestures birthed from necessity, archers leaned upon skills of articulation among politics-influenced corridors, where golden whispered promises crinkled beyond firesides at dusk, hoping for favour within once cryptic attentions drawn. Retelling shared victories or tales of noble protection bore tokens of influence, rattled through personal conviction, that might echo meaning through a society swirled in justice's ambiguity. Conversely, the legal boundaries offered moments of amusement during rare leisure spells within shared encampment accords, ribald tales of fellow warriors recounted, ridiculous predicaments narrated with a mixture of mirth and disbelief, each retelling coloured by sardonic observation, ironically underscoring a justice system both revered and ridiculed, rendering truth within each observer's recollection. Yet, there were deeper reflections shrouded among these jesting verbiages. The resilience displayed while negotiating the legal complexities mirrored battle resolve, underscoring indirect engagement across oft-changing verges and lines of demarcation, requiring deft negotiation, ensuring adherence strengthened by allies invisible within shadows cast across archaic divides. Historians continue to examine how the legal constructs of medieval times influenced societal transformation, where individual rights mingled within larger narratives, bespeaking tenets proclaimed by the state versus liberties aligned with notions of personal sovereignty veiled beneath history's intricate layers. As night's cloak douses the dimming sky with twilight's tender relief, you find solace within shared embers of camaraderie, contemplating the narratives written in parchment, promises sequestered within tales, exemplified across alternating days. The past becomes alive, a reminder both of times survived and of legislative currents navigated successfully, portending echoes of potential criminal stardom, casting glow into enveloping dreams. Entrust, O dreamer, the winds of time carrying whispers designed to guide, allowing each slumbering reverie tonight to unthread, then reunite, intangible dreams, redefining markers, conceived across your history's pages, uplifted beneath memory's faithful eye, a light beyond whispering shadows, traced uniquely by your faith, hopes and reverence cast anew. As you rise to face a new day, you find your thoughts balancing on the fine line between tranquility and turmoil, reflecting on the inner workings of your life intertwined with others. Beyond the chaos of battle and the rigors of survival, the world of an archer is also enmeshed in the complex dance of human relationships, where disputes within the ranks could often feel more consuming than the most formidable adversary found on the battlefield. Imagine yourself in a camp buzzing with life, a microcosm of medieval society, where each day is infused with the hum of conversation, the occasional clash of tempers, and the subtle negotiations that keep the societal fabric intact. The comrades close at hand, those with whom you have shared both laughter and hardship, often become confidants in this close-quartered existence. Yet, inevitably, disagreements arise. Differences of opinion, rank, and personal ambitions can ignite tensions as swiftly as a spark catching dry straw. The tales of medieval archery may not always highlight such domestic disturbances, but they were an intrinsic part of daily lives, a reflection of kinship and rivalry, friendship hardened by the anvil of common purpose. Consider disputes over the spoils of war, the equitable distribution of rations, or the ever-present quest for recognition and ascent within the ranks. The merits and demerits of leadership decisions prompted debates and occasional dissension, revealing the intricate power dynamics at play even within your unit. It was a knot of complex intertwining allegiances, perpetually adjusting to the demands of both hierarchical command and individual agency. You learn through the crucible of experience how to mediate these situations with diplomacy, leveraging shared histories to broker peace where discord might slither in. Strategic peacekeepers within your ranks employ humor as a salve to diffuse tension, employing quips and satirical tales of knights bickering over trivialities to reorient perspectives. What better teacher than a bard's wit nestled in the midst of anxiety, lifting spirits while subtly bridging rifts? Many of these disputes are temperamental whisper-scarved notes, echoing briefly before dissolving into pragmatism's embrace, when actions called for unison trumped discord. Times requiring unanimity beckoned a mysterious understanding, overriding temporarily personal grievance, as differing voices came into concert upon their mutual chord across campaigns presented. These interpersonal challenges reached heights not only marked by differences in opinion, but, surprisingly, in mundane interactions as well. Throwback glances and minor offences found resolution tethered tightly against traditional chastisements, familial alliances, or pre-benchmarking. Trusted sources scribed with credibility, stretching branches beyond current skirmishes. Historians probe these layers, uncovering how internal group dynamics could influence military decisions, extending beyond immediate crises, and influence perceptions infinitely distant. Understanding these myriad interactions paints medieval warfare and archery within a frame braided by interpersonal narrative experiences, annexed through time's etched stories. And at day's close, poised before the blazing campfire, you linger amid warmth and fellowship, pondering how these small skirmishes mirrored deeper reflections of a shared human experience woven within the migration of cultures. You absorb the night's lessons harnessed into dreams, where quelling minor disputes beg larger reconciliations, engaging a world looming softer beneath stars embroidered across wide skies, expansively indulgent. Into sleep now, the moon's guiding visage traces ancient shadows, bowing kindly among phantoms, born within shared confidences, braced for tomorrow's luminescence each, dream inscribed, bearing your cherished hopes translated amid ambiguities of shared daydreams, rapturously interconnected and yet distinctively your own. As the first light touches the morning horizon, your journey steps beyond the battlefield and into the quieter cadence of an archer's life and existence, where not every moment is dictated by the clash of steel or the tension of bowstrings. In this passage, you glimpse the more subdued aspects of medieval archery, where tranquility and routine offer their own challenges and, occasionally, comforts. When not called upon to engage in the clamour of war, life becomes grounded in the mundaneath persistent pulse of everyday tasks unfolding beneath the expanse of open skies. It may seem surprising, yet these stretches of time are anything but idle. Rather, they become seasons of forging internal and external fortitude, enabling the reintegration of normalcy amid upheaval's constant spectre. Picture a scene where the gentle monotony that weaves through daily routines anchors you a cycle of maintenance, training, and introspective reflection. Bowstrings must be checked and rechecked, the familiar rasp of sharpening arrows lining the soundtrack of days dedicated to ensuring readiness. Worn armor is methodically mended, each repair completed with the steady hands of those who understand that vigilance pays dividends beyond the battlefield. Routine drills become not merely practice sessions, but opportunities for mastery and improvement, to perfect techniques like a composer fine-tuning a symphony. In the quiet intervals of training, beneath the attentive gaze of instructors whose guidance is instinctual as much as intentional, you cultivate precision that becomes second nature. In these phases of relative calm, bonds within the archer unit deepen, friendships broaden, becoming elemental layers of camaraderie that thrive through shared narratives. Jests, traded freely among fellows, serve as both recreation and social glue, reminding you that while duties summon isolation, relationships offer warmth and clarity within effort's sphere. The quiet evenings provide occasion for shared dinners, where the simple joy of company is bolstered by the camaraderie of break bread, exchanged across tablets carved with care, in equal parts by history's adage and life's vagaries. Beyond military duties, you find niches inviting participation in the village or town, where your service lends moments for engagements otherwise overshadowed by combatantism. Archer folk might assist farmers, exchanging martial law for harvest tales, or offering protection services that intertwine grassroots economic collaborations. Community mingles cleanly, absorbing suspended lives away from battle's respite, enriching services exchanged away from arrows anointed by fate's inevitable call. The common folk, less acquainted with battles, offer their own insights and concerns, enriching your understanding of medieval life's broader tapestry. Here, you forge simple connections through commerce, provision, and occasionally, celebration reasons to gather, juxtaposing the urgency of conflict with resonant timbre, opposite seriousness, lodged within shared traditions. Those whose trades mirror everyday necessities reflect history's transcendent pulse beyond grandiose, imagining bearing contrasting glories or gravitudes alone. Historian scrutiny reminds us that the downtime experienced by archers shaped the cultural substrata of medieval military societies, infusing values between memories of dispute and friendlier social architectures extended metaphorically throughout future economies. Their findings illustrate these practices formed quiet, yet influential aspects, balancing weighted perceptions through mechanisms, invisible, yet enduring. Across ages realized collaboratively, indivisibly bound, night descends with familiarity. Its calm illumination, a gentler embrace than daylight's stark revelations. As your head finds rest, surrender unto the unwavering reality formed in rhythms simple yet richly, breathing in and out to embrace life's odyssey balanced against trials fragile, beautiful exchanges marking readiness honed in repose transcultural, beyond today's ephemeral scintillations, remaining deeply kindled amid present balanced grace, transmuted within sleep's asylum generously offered. Rest assured, wanderer of past days and climates, for tomorrow is poised upon sunlit edges, tracing constellations upon dreams carried swiftly, evolving enchantments caressed upon history's ever-whispering tapestry, affectionately guiding stories, gently awaiting embrace. As the new day blooms, gilded with a warm glow, your pulse adjusts to the gentle rhythms of medieval life's rare moments of celebration. Though the times dominated by conflict and survival are abundant, there also exist pockets of genuine joy and festivities interludes, where the rigors faced upon the battlefield give way to merriment and shared exuberance. For an archer, fully immersed in the rigors of martial life, these celebrations are golden reprieves occasions where the cares of rank and duty slip away, if only temporarily, leaving behind the camaraderie and the promise of respite. Festivities in the medieval world had their roots in seasonal cycles and religious observance, providing cardinal points in the calendar where community and kinship flourished. Picture a village dressed in festive attire, where every gathered person, from the grizzled elders to wide-eyed children, seems colored by hues of jubilation. Here, the scent of roasting meats mingles with sweet pastries and bread, perfuming the air and inviting a dance of senses. Amid this tapestry of indulgence and joy, you find yourself adrift not as an archer, but as a participant in life's broader commerce. The centerpiece of these celebrations often rested upon enduring traditions, such as the harvest festival, a time when the culmination of labor harmonized with nature's bounty. Grain-woven baskets filled to brimming spill forth shades of plenty-rich, golden sheaves, and vibrant gourd-streaked bounty, narrating a story of toil rewarded. Among these scenes, you catch glimpses of folk dancing. Laughter and music sparkle like sunbeams dappling across moving shadows, melodies stitched together in joyous harmony to cradle your spirit. Performances unfold around crackling bonfires, pulling jubilant cheers from onlookers as jongleurs and minstrels skip and caper-spinning yarns decked in humor or solemn myth, whilst trained hands agilely pluck and strum melodies that spiral into twilight's grace. You are swept along with the crowd's exuberant trails, where moments of spectacle give way to inklings of community, immersing the senses in vibrant chaos woven with joyous narrative. In the evenings, tales are exchanged over tankards of frothy, Aline formal communion, a reminder of shared existence, stretching beyond mortality's grasp into the realm of ancestral excuse, linking celebrated life recounted with glossed adhesive spatters, propelling humorously toward, yet mischievously away from, mortality's dusky corridors. These narratives trickle amid conversations, binding collective experiences with fantastical hues laced timelessly against pillared epochs, echoed through allies' triadic portrayal. Occasionally, these celebrations witness struggles between good-naturedly contesting archer ranks vying amongst themselves not through arms or accuracy, but dexterity of skill and jubilant prowess games of strength and strategy, tug-of-war, wrestling, and even contests of archery reframed with playful ease, treating targets as tongue-in-cheek competition. Victory symbolizes not grandiosity but just a playful spark, igniting heartening rivalries and glowing memories. Historians continue to examine how festival culture influenced military morale, fostering cohesion and resilience within ranks, bound and amplified through carefree unity, flourishing beyond stark realities intermittently. Such analysis bridges past and present, revealing how cultural dynamics transcended geographic echelons, intensively capturing epochal essence within celebrations worth convening among medieval domains. As twilight envelops your festivities, a hushed reverence washes over, the gentle echoes of joy whispered upon night's softly cradled form. Rest, dear sojourner, amid festive cohesion through today's luminous paths, in a few's otherwise obscured dances, jousting upon life's margins, evolving lovingly by embrace both resonant and true. In dreams, those moments linger still, touching with warmth the memory of untethered felicity found ensconced in laughter's cradle. Often, mirth and revelry celebrate humanity's eternal spirit, intertwining with echoes of vibrancy held immortal between night's whispered recarland. Thus, indelibly etched into the shared narrative forevermore, reminder of life's luminescent oscillations, traversed so beautifully in between, enduring echoes, sung soundlessly, enduring as timeless spectrums seen, dreamed and ever felt. As the days blend into the tapestry of your journey, the roles of superstition and belief emerge as compelling threads woven into the fabric of medieval life. In an era deeply intertwined with the mystical, where spiritual and supernatural veins pulse beneath everyday existence, understanding these influences offers insight into the archery world. For archers, favoring practicality, the reliance on both superstition and belief was more than casual habitat, was a means to navigate the unpredictable nature of warfare and existence. Picture yourself preparing for battle or a competition, where a whispered incantation or a ritual gesture could mean the difference between triumph and catastrophe. In these quiet moments, archers sought to tip the scales toward their favor, invoking the mystical to guide their arrows true. During the medieval era, omens and portents carried significant societal whispers of fate interpreted by the skilled and wise. A bird in flight, a sudden shift in the wind, or the simple arrangement of fallen leaves each event had its own lexicon, offering insight into destiny's inklings. You and your peers understood these signs through shared lore, applying them judiciously with high hopes for their truth in battle's uncertain theatre. Your bow, an instrument both of destruction and survival, could become an object of spiritual significance. Imagine carving symbols of protection into the wood, or murmuring prayers as you strung it, infusing intention to safeguard yourself and others. Arrows might be blessed, either by clergy or through personal rituals, addressing the soul's yearning for protection from physical and spiritual harm. It's an elemental pact between warrior and weapon, reinforcing convictions that stretch beyond mere skill. These beliefs, while lacking empirical proof, contributed to a collective assurance and invisible tether, binding your company and lending courage. In shared rituals, the connection between individuals strengthened, imbuing spirits with resolve, echoing whispers that broadened shivering boundaries amid uncertainties encountered. The shared rhythm of collective belief dovetailed with the unity of purpose on which survival commonly relied. Historians still argue whether these superstitions played tangible roles in shifting allegiances or bolstering morale within ranks, speculating on the unseen harmonies and dissonances that steered outcomes pursued by monks, clerics, and paganistic spirit keepers, evolving across epochal tides into common languages of kinship, fostered jointly by bearers of arms, stoic or skeptical alike. Moreover, belief in divine intervention or spiritual guidance provided comfort amid chaos and loss. When an arrow flew true or missed its mark, the weaving of fate was often attributed to higher powers at play, the blessed guiding hand, as it were. This narrative steered both triumphs and failures, offering the warrior-experienced vessels a context for understanding their place amid history's sprawling pageantry. Even as daylight yields itself to the quiet embrace of night, you continue to weave these beliefs, these ancient whispers, into your dreams. Here, the world's seen and unseen elements coalesce into ethereal tapestries, a rich fusion of known principles bending across newfound expanse, where what lies beyond reason becomes intertwined with the abundant mysteries scattered by stories beyond recorded word. As the moonlight gently bathes the sleeping earth, you recline into the peaceful slumber of a heart steeped in centuries of faith. Beneath your eyelids, imagine verdant visions where legends meld with the fantastical, blurring myriad realms of possibility. These are the very textures that grant breadth to existence, moments where belief transcends logic, leaving behind a trail of inspiration's brilliance in its wake. So rest on, dear dreamer, among threads freshly anointed by time's weightless illumination-permitting stories, spun in spectral lore to wander freely astride this night's devoted embrace, cherished always anew. As dreams tenderly unspool, let every sigh, every gesture know their echoes contract deeply, in harmony, dwelling within the heart's shelter warmed ever so gently this ethereal eve once more. The sun's ascent over the horizon marks another chapter in your story, one where recognition and valor intertwine, in a world where archers often struggled to stand out amid the grand tapestries that celebrated knights and noblemen. As you prepare for the day's trials, the challenge of gaining recognition in a storied land reveals itself as a delicate balance between skill, circumstance, and fortune. In the medieval narrative, the echo of clashing swords and the gallop of armored knights often filled the annals of memory, leaving archers, those whose bows and arrows defined the outcomes of key battlestow, persist in relative anonymity. You, the archer, stalwart and skilled, know intimately the toil and discipline it takes to master your craft, yet such diligence often goes unrewarded in a society that favors chivalric romanticism. For an archer, there exists an inner longing for acknowledgement amid tales of grandeur and urge to affirm that your efforts and sacrifices make a lasting imprint. The valor demonstrated on the battlefield is no less than any other warrior's, and your contributions form crucial, albeit understated, cornerstones in the shifting narratives of war and peace. The likes of Agincourt and Crécy underscore the role archers played, sending volleys into enemy ranks with precision akin to an artist's brushstrokes. And yet, recognition often eluded the tacticians behind the draw and release. The story is almost Sartrean. You, as an individual archer, in tune with form and instinct, whose life succinctly participates yet wrestles with the desire to emerge distinctly from behind legend's towering crest. At times, tournaments and archery contests present an opportunity for glory behind the rolled eyes of courtly gossip. These events test skill in non-combat environs, elevating victors, not just among peers, but also within the gaze of nobility. Majestic honor clings closely to such exercises, rendering heroes fabricated on skill's tailored merit. It is somewhat a scratch card for renown amidst medieval ranks, where chance rubs shoulders alongside pure precision. The drives within such endeavors intertwine personal ambition with collective pride. Moments within these performance arenas, and victories snatched at unexpected intervals, reveal pathways toward legitimacy and validation amid warrior camaraderie's embrace. To stand recognized among equals becomes both an attestment and an invitation to partake in histories broader than assigned. Historians debate the extent to which archers' achievements impacted contemporary views of status and hierarchy within medieval society. They delve into the selective window of history, examining the push and pull between recognition forwarded by deeds undertaken against the oft-contrasted feudal disparity dictating public overture. Beyond sensation lies the essence-steady resolve, mixed with humble acknowledgement swirled broad within whirls, tempestuous within, across courtly and civilian vectors alike. Acknowledgement sometimes reigns quietly within inner domains, untouched by scrolls and tapestry's virtuosity, respected within guides, won through collected anthems of journeyed experience, where self-awareness resplendently triumphs, beyond accolade's placeholder, and when day surrenders unto quiet night's glow, reflect not upon the myriad narratives skewed or untold, but rather allow truth's buoyancy to endure, steadied amidst shadows past. Let resolute peace, calm, yearning heart, for recognition unfolds on its own timeline, woven naturally by outcomes weave, the heroes of which in gathered stillness require no mere audience beyond twilight's inherent grace unfurled. Sleep now, beneath skies embracing gentleness, enveloped by unwinded dreamscapes, carrying sagas unseen yet ever felt within warming embrace. Here, quests await discovery through reconciling mirrors, recognized gracefully, seen anew through life's gleaming tales unspooled, cradled within individuality, reflected mutually in twilight's mentorship concealed. As the day stretches its golden fingers across the landscape, your thoughts turn to the exceptional stories that have woven themselves into the fabric of Archery's rich history. One such narrative, though often shrouded and seldom acknowledged, is that of the women who, against the odds, took up the bow and etched their place in the medieval tapestry, a narrative of defiance, skill, and quiet resilience. The prevailing winds of the medieval era dictated roles defined sharply by gender. Yet, even within these constraints, stories of female archers punctuate the vast chronicles, their bows drawn tight against the societal fabric that would see them relegated to roles far removed from the battlefield. These women, through determination and aptitude, disrupted the status quo and demonstrated that mastery over the bow was not an exclusively male domain. Imagine a society where a few bold women managed to transcend traditional boundaries, perhaps growing up in the shadow of fathers or brothers who provided entry into the martial world, or inheriting family responsibilities that demanded their participation in defense. These pioneering souls stepped confidently into roles assumed unattainable, their arrows flying as true as any man's public tea. Tales circulate of noble women defending their homes during sieges, standing shoulder to shoulder with men, drawing arrows from quivers as readily as breath. Some accounts, laced with elements of legend, speak of women disguising themselves to join battle testament not only to necessity but also to their unyielding spirit. These stories, while sometimes mythologized, reflect the tumultuous nature of medieval life, where virtue was not solely tied to birthright. One notable name is that of Jeanne de Clisson, a noblewoman turned pirate who wielded her bow in revenge after her husband's execution, commanding respect and fear as ferociously as any of her male counterparts. Though she fought primarily at sea, her story shows how women could navigate the tight ropes of society and manifest their wrath and justice through martial prowess. It's within the tapestry of folklore that mythical figures such as Maid Marian of Robin Hood's yeasty mythos illustrate popular imagination favoring female capability and valor. The staying power of such stories, even within a fictionalized realm, underscores an acknowledgement, persisting through time, of what women could achieve with bow in hand, suggesting universes, navigating disparate societies, and questioning archaic conventions. Historians still argue over the exact roles women played in medieval archery, their debates colored as much by contemporary societal biases as by direct evidence. The discourse continues to expand, offering tantalizing glimpses of a complex reality where women's involvement inflates beyond roles traditionally accepted or envisaged. Beyond the clangor of scholarly disputes rests an essential appreciation for the paths these women forged, even when constrained by their transient presence among records and ballads showcasing talents obscured by time. Their resilience offers a luminous reflection of what defiance against social constraints can possible, an inspiration fueled quietly by ambition and luminous understanding within divided realms. As night draws its veil over the waking world, consider these the unsung heroines who carved a niche in a man's world, their arrows like shooting stars arcing across the sky, momentarily seen, but deeply impacting those who witnessed. Imagine dreams where these figures guide you through landscapes enriched with tales of struggle, victory, and the bending of destiny's relations visible soothed into fruition beneath archways future-orienting, path lit by strength's confluence, costumed in courage. Rest gentle under night's benevolent ambivalence. Wanderera's dusk renders ineffable chronicles within, enshrined sojourns inked anew. Embrace their strength through spectral archways, drawn with abiding resilience. Treading softly of those whose spirits emerging live curious harmony bared, liberated and noble, caressing each remaining dream. As the shadows of another day recede and light spills across the landscape, Your path through history leads you into the realm of legends, those captivating tapestries spun from tales of far-off heroics and deeds, sung in taverns and whispered along roadsides. These stories, woven in fireside glow and ink, mix myth with reality, casting archers as valiant heroes whose feats often defy the bounds of human endeavor. Robin Hood, one of the most enduring figures in popular legend, emerges in your minder consummate archer, the defender of the downtrodden, whose merry band defied tyrants under the leafy canopy of Sherwood Forest. His story speaks to the heart's desire for justice and fairness, showing what the bow-wielding rogue could achieve in righting wrongs when society itself seemed tilted askew. Poised with impeccable aim and unwavering purpose, he remains the quintessential image when conjuring tales of archery heroism. Yet, across the historical continuum, there's often a chasm dividing these evocative myths from the archer's reality, a void where the turbulent edges of romanticization and veracity meet in hearty discourse. The romanticized interpretations drawn in evocative hues mirror societal biases as much as projected ideals, creating contrast between true skill and imagined daring unwound within retelling's fervent hands. The everyday archer, less endowed with legendary prowess than steady determination, carried forth a life far from the glamorous embellishments that dance through whispered tales. Your world revolves not around escapades in fabled woods, but rather in fields marked by the pragmatic concerns of survival and loom of war's uncertainties. The sincere, unembellished narratives, more starkly rooted in tenacity and perseverance, shine, though less grandiose in song's breath, with rewarding gravitas. Think of the obscure yet real battlefields like Barnet and Towton, where archers played pivotal roles not just through feline cunning but via disciplined, relentless practice by armies converged upon the landscape painting, arching volleys, sowing fate's deeds. The practical details reveal that skill stems from repetition and ruthlessness, mastery honed not through clandestine exploits but through rigor and concentrated effort. Yet, even within these stark frames, the imagination finds room to paint brighter sinister testament to human creativity's need to romanticize survival into art illustrates a powerful employment of narrative agency. Story, in this sense, bridges gaps, propelling essential connection through history's fabric, binding modernity's inklings with echoes from which glory-laden songs arise. Historians continue to interrogate the division between legend and reality. What truths, if any, lie beneath layers of troubadour embellishments? Their quest often reveals kernel dusks, soothes texture's grain, showing cohesion. Humanity paints across threads, bare but earnestly crossed and shared. Analysis tempers, interpretation. Yet passion fuels continued debate, nestled beneath pages and stages, wherein fictional forebearers reside vividly recursive. Reflect then, as today dims into the enfolding night, on the appeal such legends hold over our imagination. Though exaggerated and ideally framed, their deep-rooted truths beckon, speaking to aspirations of courage, honor, and the underlying desire for justice inherently valued, inherently questioned. In legends, we find what we seek within our self-idealized expressions, where hopes, however fantastical, entwine with fabric matured raw beneath societal seas. Set gentle upon the dreams, cradling stories gently revisited, quietly clutched beneath starlit paws, adorned liberally as lifesavers untracked memory arcs, piecing times united beneath stars' watchful gleam. Here ancestral spectres, known only by earnest imaginings, gather, invoking veiled promises, trodden across realms once darkened, now searching harmonies extant, but for ardent resplendence yet untold. May your sleep, dear journeyer, cradle through storied veins, textured lovingly cast ever brighter sped toward, new dawns embracing whispers of forgotten glories, renewing within waking sounds. As you linger on the boundary between the conscious world and the embrace of sleep, you feel a gentle tranquility settle over you, a calm moment to reflect upon the journey that arches back through time, to touch the lives of medieval archers who navigated worlds filled with trials and triumphs. In this fading light, Allow these last thoughts to weave you gently into dreams where history's echoes become a lullaby. The life of an archer, storied and strenuous, unfolded layer by layer as an intricate tapestry of clarity and complexity, narrative spun from the fibers of wood and string, shaped by persistence and adorned by the touch of legends. Today you've wandered through the forests of medieval hardship, past days marked by relentless practice, masked vigilant nights, and wrestlings with moral quandaries, where even leisure painted tales of camaraderie and banquet halls echoed joy. Now, as you take a deep breath, feel the weight of those times brush against you like the softest mantle, a tapestry woven through eras resting now upon your shoulders, a reminder of resilience, proficiency, and timeless stories that transcend their epoch. Within that gentle weight lies the understanding that even the humblest amongst us partake in epic sagas written across forgotten pages. The echoes of laughter, the silent resolve against struggles shared, and the simple pleasures cultivated along countryside paths now glide tenderly into your heart. Let your senses soften and stretch as the room envelops you in its quietude. Hear the whisper of leaf-tipped breezes melding with the hum of your contemplative fan, as humanity's heartbeat pulses gently alongside night-touched centuries past. Feel the coolness of the ground underneath, the warmth of woven threads cocooning you into the comfort of your own sanctuary. The body, now heavy with the gentle insistence of rest, allows the undulating waves of fatigue to wash over and through you a soothing river, erasing the sharp angles of today's encounters, leaving only smooth, rounded stones of experience behind. Reaching beyond the veil of conscious thought, remember the resilience found in the tales of archers like those of the bow and string, tension sliding away as release holds sway. For this night, let not the trials of the past few hours dictate your dreams. Instead, as you drift toward the horizon where waking fades to dreams, find solace in the journey itself, a path lined with stories untold, awaiting the embrace of your dreams and your unique perspectives. For what awaits on the other side of sleep is more than pearls of wisdom gathered from history. It's the promise of renewal and rejuvenation, where even the timeless heart of an archer finds respite before the dawn. The moon casts her silvery pathways, songs of serenity sung in whisper-thin beams, guiding souls through slumbered realms until daylight returns. So now, dear wanderer, may you rest gently upon the soft pillow of time's embrace. With each deepening breath, let go of today, allowing your spirit to roam freely across the fertile fields of sleep. As the curtain quietly falls upon waking consciousness, let the warmth of timelessness gather you unto peaceful rest. Sweet dreams,